You have accessed the podcast of OA, located deep within Sector 14845 and powered by the Emerald Light of Will. The podcast of OA is your guide to the Green Lantern universe. Hosted by Lantern Myron Rumsey, the podcast of OA begins now.
Welcome, everyone, to episode number 131 of the podcast of OA. I'm your co-host, Myron Rumsey, and I'm joined by my good buddy, Phil Bova. Phil, how are you?
I'm doing great, Myron. It's good to hear from you. It looks like it's been about a month since we last talked.
That's true. We got through the Thanksgiving holiday. How was your holiday?
It went great. I had a great time. I don't eat a lot anyway, so I kept it at bay. But what I did eat was delicious. It was fun. My wife and I adopted 2 new kittens over the holidays. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we had traveled to Indianapolis to her cousin's house, and on our way back, we stopped in Terre Haute to see her grandmother, and they had a humane society there, and ended up bringing home 2 kittens.
That's nice. That's great.
Yeah. So here we are with 2 dogs and 2 cats now. So, family.
All you need now is the Ark.
It's an interesting family dynamic, that's for sure.
I bet. I had 3 different Thanksgivings because I have my sister's family. My sister and my brother are all that's left of my side of the family. And so we had a Thanksgiving there, and then we had a Thanksgiving at my wife's family, and then we had our own family Thanksgiving. So I'm pretty turkeyed out right now, to be honest.
That's a lot. That's a lot when you got to go back and forth to 3-4 different places,
It's crazy. It's crazy. But, it's family, and family and crazy go together pretty quickly.
They do. That they do.
But, we've got the second issue of the Green Lantern book that just came out this week to talk about. And for our retro review, we're going to go back not too far into the past and talk about Green Lantern Rebirth. I was looking back over the show and I thought, we started recording this show in 2011. So we missed a lot of the Jeff Johns run. So I thought, maybe it would be worth going back and looking at Green Lantern Rebirth because it was such an important book to the mythology and gets us to where we are now. So.
Well, and then it's always a starting point. That's where everybody always defaults to when they talk about where should I pick up reading Green Lantern.
Yeah, it's one of the I think it's one of the 2 most popular places to get people to start off. One being that, one being Secret Origin. But it's a great story, so I can't wait to talk about that. But we also, we have some sad things to talk about. I know it's been a few weeks from when this happened, but the passing of Stan Lee, I can't not do a comic book podcast and acknowledge the tremendous contributions of Stan Lee and what a loss it is to the comic families.
Oh, it's unbelievable, unbelievable. You always know that moment's going to come when it comes to such an iconic individual, much like himself or anybody for that matter, much like George Bush. But that one hits close to home when you're a fan of all the comic books and the medium that it represents. And it's a tough loss for everybody. And it doesn't matter what allegiance you run. DC or Marvel, it doesn't matter. He's always been an icon for both.
Right. And there's been a lot of cross contributions. I think if you were to think about the comic book Mount Rushmore, certainly Stan Lee goes up there, as long as is a wonderful creator like Julius Schwartz, who had a tremendous impact on comics history that is often an unsung hero. But I think Stan was probably the best spokesman, I think, for the comic book industry. Growing up, came up from a pretty poor family, and most of my comics back when I was really young came in bags that didn't have covers. You'd get 3 or 4 comics in a bag, and you'd only see the front and back issue of the bag. They'd be polybagged in a bundle, and you'd get like 4 or 5 comics for 50 cents. And I, as a very naive young man at the time, did not realize there was more than one comic book company. So I often wondered why Spider-Man didn't fight alongside of the Justice League, because I just didn't know any different, and the Stan Lee soapboxes, to me, Stan always made me feel like I was part of a club, that I belonged to something or belonged with a group of people. And as somebody who, like a lot of, I think, comics readers were somewhat, I don't want to say ostracized from the general public, but we were the geeks before geekdom was cool. And there was a great sense of belonging that Stan Lee created. You felt like you were in a club, and and Stan was a very fatherly figure in some ways. So I think he will definitely be missed, even though he did not have as many contributions later in life. His impact is something that will forever shape the comic book industry. I mean, all those characters that he contributed to their creation of are mainstays in the comic industry, just like a lot of the DC characters. So, tremendous loss and a tremendous creator.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you're right. I mean, it's like Jack Kirby, I mean, it's an icon. It's an icon. And, and all the outpourings that went out on Twitter that day and all social media platforms, I mean, you could just tell. I mean, he touched a lot of people. He touched a lot of lives and actors, actresses, the movie industry itself. He changed the genre, and he changed the genre while the genre was changing in itself. So it really goes to show what great lengths he took and what he admired and what he loved. And that was this industry.
That's absolutely true. I loved a lot of the outpourings that we got to see, the respect and the love that were paid to him. I was dismayed by the reactions of some comic book fans who chose to take the moment to criticize Stan for things that I don't know as to whether they were even true. But it never fails to surprise me in the way in which people behave when they're supposedly fans of superheroes and they act like super zeros,
Yeah, it's I know what you're talking about. And there was a lot of just people don't need to be that way. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, if you like somebody or not, it's irrelevant. Keep your personal opinions, negative or otherwise, to yourselves. I mean, at least show some common courtesy and some respect. I mean, the man deserves it. Anybody deserves it.
Right. There were some similar things going on with President Bush. And I don't want to get into politics and all that stuff, but some of the people who couldn't get away from honoring President George Bush, but at the same time, rather than just honor him, they decided to turn it around and take digs at the current president. And regardless of what you think, it's just not an appropriate way to be.
There's no comparison, not when it comes to a death situation. I mean, you got to leave that stuff out of it.
That's right.
You're totally right. So.
That's right. But anyway, on to better topics. We've got some comics to talk about, and I'm really excited to hear what your thoughts are on the Green Lantern. So let's take a quick pause, and then we'll come back and we'll start talking about the Green Lantern #2. Excellent. Well, Phil, we are into the second issue of the Lian Sharp and Grant Morrison The Green Lantern title. And this issue had a lot of stuff going on. I'm really curious to hear what your thoughts are.
It did have a lot going on. It's taken me well, we're only 2 issues in, but I don't even know when it's going to happen. But it's taken me a while to grasp the visual disparity between this one and the prior runs. This one has such detail and so much complexity happening on each page that it's considerably different than the prior run with Venditti.
Yeah, it can be a little overwhelming.
It really can. Yeah, it really can. But you know what? He got to hand it to Liam Sharp. I mean, the man can draw, and his art. I was going past looking at some of his older stuff, and not just this is before Brave and the Bold with the Batman and Wonder Woman, and some of his older stuff. He's really developed, and even his earlier stuff was really good.
Yeah, I think he's different from what we've seen before. So for some people, maybe it's a little off-putting. But some of the things that I really loved in this issue, how this issue opens up with Rotlop Fan and it starts out in absolute blackness. I just thought that was neat. I don't think we've ever seen that before.
No, it was a really good idea, and it kind of feels to me like that's a Grant Morrison kind of thing. I mean, reflectively, Liam Sharp is Grant Morrison's kind of artist. So, I mean, these two work great together when it comes to creating a narrative.
Yeah, I'd agree, and it was great to see Rotlop Fan get a little bit of a spotlight again, and the return of Evil Star. At least the Evil Star that's familiar to those of us that have been reading Green Lantern for a long time, because we had the Van Jensen era relaunch in the Green Lantern Corps book when Evil Star got this really horrible redesign, characters and design, but this is back to the classic version.
Yeah, and it's really cool how Morrison decided to dig up all these older characters. You know, I love when past is brought forward. You know, you can't appreciate it enough with a lot of these characters that he's starting to utilize. Even the guy with the volcano head, I'm not sure of his name, but
his name is Volk.
Volk, yeah. I mean, even characters like that you haven't seen very often, or you haven't seen in quite some time, that you just forget about them. And then the next thing you know, they pop up, and you're like, oh, I remember that guy. You know, and having Sharp's pen on it. I mean, he just really does a knockout job. I mean, with Rotlop Fan, I mean, he does a knockout job with these characters.
Yeah, and Volk is, you know, this is a bit of a redesign, but I like it better than the way he was originally portrayed. He originally used a character from 1985. And, you know, the Volk, you know, it begs for him to have the last name of Ano. but it's miles away from what his original design was like. And, you know, he actually did show up during the Jeff Johns run. He was in the War of the Green Lantern story, but he was kind of in the background.
Now, he didn't have the volcano then, though, right? He had...
He's always had the volcano head, but it wasn't drawn that way. It was drawn more like this light, you know, like there was so much brightness that you couldn't see what was going on. And I really like this thing where, you know, the costume is kind of being burnt by the cinders of a little miniature volcanic explosion. I just think it's just wild and wacky.
Well, and even the emblem itself kind of represents that kind of rocky nature of a volcano, kind of how it's drawn. You know, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, I like it. And Zax, to see Zax back is really kind of neat, because Zax is a character who's died a couple of times now, I think.
Yeah, I think Blackest Night was one mention, right? I think he died in Blackest Night, or he came back.
He came back as a Black Lantern. He died during the 52 book. And that was after he already died in Crisis on Infinite Earths. So the running thing is everybody from his planet named Zax, or is it a case of he really can't die? He's like a cockroach and he won't die. I'm not sure, but it was neat because Volk and Zax were friends back in the day, so it was neat to kind of see them carried forward in that way.
Yeah, and that's Morrison bringing these old characters up front and center, you know. But I think he's creating. I mean, I think eventually what this is going to lead into is a core type book anyway. But like, I think what he's doing is creating these characters all over again, and he's building the core from the ground up, instead of like throwing a bunch of characters together in a number one title and trying to force feed everybody these, you know, all these different core members right, all at one time.
Yeah, and what I liked in particular about the way that he used Rotlop Fan in conjunction with the Evil Star was the fact that, you know, Rotlop Fan comes from the obsidian depths where the light of the stars doesn't reach. Well, what better way to keep Evil Star from gaining enough power to break free than putting him in prison there? To me, that was a brilliant idea.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, He does good with it. I mean, he does good with bringing these characters out. I mean, and I think that's just Grant Morrison's take on where he's going with this Green Lantern Corps title. What did you think of seeing Oa again? Considerably different, the Blade Runner style Oa.
Yeah, that's a great analogy, Phil. I loved the way that it's drawn. You know, there's this easy path you go down with designing Oa and showing what it looks like, where, you know, everything is green and everything has a Green Lantern logo plastered on it. And I like the fact that the Oa looks like a busy planet full of life, not just you know, the remnants of an ancient civilization with Green Lanterns running around on it. That maybe it might be a center of commerce as well, you know, and that there might be all these other beings that live there or do work there. And I just thought it was kind of cool. I really liked it. It's certainly different from what we've seen before. And I was kind of getting in this book, in this particular issue, almost a almost a Hellboy kind of vibe, Hellboy in space, where you know how in the Hellboy movies, the way they treated the science fiction-y monster creatures were just kind of matter-of-factly, like it's not a big deal. And this is the same kind of thing. It's like Hal's walking around and all this weird stuff that would phase us doesn't phase him at all. And because it's treated so matter-of-factly, it just creates this weird dichotomy between the fantastic and maybe the things that are over the top and just this exaggerated reality.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And that's a good point. What's your thoughts on Hal's character?
I'm still trying to figure out how Morrison is getting Hal's voice. There are things that I like and there are things that I don't like. Like the line that he says in this issue that kind of got under my skin a little bit is the part where Hal says, I've been a bastard my whole life, kind of thing. And I'm not sure whether he's doing this as a cop trying to get the Spider Girl to kind of open up to him, or whether he actually truly believes that. And that's kind of where I struggle a little bit. I know that he's trying to take all of the different eras of Hal's life and not discard any of them, so that, he was the traveling salesman and he was the toy sales guy and the insurance adjuster. And he's done all these things, and that he's experienced so much that Earth doesn't hold much for him, which to me, I'm not quite sure I buy that yet. And one of the things I find missing in his characterization of Hal is the character of Hal. That, Hal's got all this charisma, and I don't see that here. I almost see somebody who's kind of somewhat bored. But at the same time, I loved how, like in the last issue, his understanding of the Spider Guild people allowed him to get the information out of this spoiled little rich spider baby girl, to get that information out of her because he understood the culture.
Spider baby girl. I mean, it's the only way you could put it, right?
Right. So I'm kind of in a weird spot. We're 2 issues in. And I owe Morrison enough to find out where he's going before I can judge it. So I'm trying to divorce myself a little bit from the fact that I've been reading Green Lantern for over 40 years, and I'm pretty sure I've got a lock on what I think Hal's like, and there are things here that I'm not sure fit.
I kind of got the feeling that I don't know if I'm wrong about this, but he kind of seems like a lost puppy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, kind of.
And I don't, Hal's never struck me as being the self-deprecating type of character when he talks himself in that person, like, being a bastard child or whatnot. And I don't see a lot of arrogance in his characterization. He's always been an arrogant pomp individual, and it's never been matter of fact in your face. And when it has been like that, it always felt like it's been like that because it was warranted, But it doesn't seem like he has any gusto here. It just seems like he's kind of just going through this motion, like you had said. Just kind of, I don't know. But again, like you had mentioned, I got to give Grant Morrison his take on where he's going to be leading this character, and it might be in an altogether different direction than what we're familiar with. And sometimes that's just the price you pay when another writer comes on.
Right. I want to see where he's going to go, and maybe this is, I don't know. It's hard to say, but yeah, I think the idea of, like you said, losing his gusto or not having his mojo right now is how he's chosen to write the character. But maybe we're going to, we don't know where it's going to go. I always felt like, people always characterized Hal as reckless, and I never really saw him as reckless, but I saw him as somebody who, as a test pilot, has to make so many split-second decisions that he makes at a quicker rate than you or I could. He makes decisions, and you combine that with his ability to take risk of any length to accomplish his goal, and you combine those 2 factors together, and you kind of get a reckless. That's how it appears to the outside people. Sure. But I always saw him as somebody who he processed all the possibilities really, really quickly and took the one that he felt was going to get the best result, no matter what the cost was to himself.
What about, what do you think about Trilla True? I mean, she's new, right? She's a little bit newer of a character.
Yeah, at first I wasn't sure if she was a Zudarian or not. She certainly had the bird beak of a Zudarian, but it's been pretty much confirmed. I think outside of the book, in terms of interviews, he's mentioned that she is a Zudarian. I'm not sure how that works and how that feathers in with Somar Lee that we saw during the Venditti run, but I'm not sure how much continuity is carrying over. And to me, it's a double-edged sword. I want to give the creators the ability to tell a story they want to tell, but at the same time, I want to believe that this is a living universe and that there are kind of some rules that apply that would apply in our universe. And it's hard sometimes when you have things like that happen. Is she just a second Green Lantern from Zudar? Well, I guess, we've got 6 or more Green Lanterns from Earth, depending on some of these new books that are coming out. We could be up to 8, the way it looks. Is it hard to believe that you could have 2 from Zudar?
No. I mean, and not only that, I hope that somewhere down the line, Morrison, I don't know if he'll do this or not, but I hope he cross-references some of the other Lanterns, John Stewart and Jessica Cruz over in Odyssey and so on and so forth. I don't know if he will or not, or if he's just going to keep this as a self-contained title, but it would be nice if they're mentioned,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they're doing there. I mean, he's mentioned that there aren't going to be any Earth Lanterns in there for a while, but they just released today the variant for cover for issue 3, and Jon Stewart's on the cover of it. So I don't know if that's just artistic license or what the deal is with that.
Oh, really? I didn't see that. I didn't see that today.
Yeah, it's a cover by Jai Lee.
Oh, that's right. It had a few of the core members on there, didn't it?
Yeah, Kilowog was on it. Some of the posing was a little strange, at least for my taste.
Kilowog I'm not big on his art anyway. I never been fond of his art.
No. What did you think about the return of the Dorians?
What page you on there? That's
that's the aliens that show up at the end. They're the ones that are stealing the planets.
Right.
And that's the same species as Kanjar-Ro.
And those are interesting looking characters, aren't they?
Yeah. And poor Evil Star, he gets kind of taken over by that vampire and gets bitten, and as he puts it, she drained all the stars from his veins.
That's kind of sad too. He brings them back just to kill them off,
Well, yeah, it was weird, and that was one of the things about Hal in this issue that kind of threw me off, when that he's telling the nurse creature on this space station to the doctor doesn't have to come right away. He's killed a lot of people. He can suffer. I'm not sure if that's what Hal would actually do in that situation.
Well, especially he's got his mask off in the process,
well, yeah, because he's got the empathy of Evil Star's like, take your mask off. Your eyes are creepy because they're blank. Take off the mask. So he does so, which shows the sign of compassion. But then when he's leaving, he tells the nurse to call a doctor, but tell him that the man killed 2.5 billion people. There's no need to hurry.
Or at least maybe he thought, well, I don't need to worry about him because he's going to live.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe that too. I mean, I find it hard to believe he'd bring Evil Star back just for a few panels just to kill the poor guy off right away.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. We'll see. But I did kind of like the cliffhanger at the end where Hal goes to Earth and the Earth is gone.
Yeah, it's really cool. But I wonder if, I don't know if this is playing into other continuity when in other titles. But the Earth is gone, and I don't know if you're familiar with this or not. It's in the Phantom Zone, and over in one of the Superman titles.
Yeah, I read an article about that. I'm not reading the Superman book, but I did see the headline where they were saying that this story and Brian Michael Bendis' Superman story kind of are at odds with each other. But hey, we can have 8 Green Lanterns from Earth. We can have the Earth disappear twice. Why not?
That's also true. What about Controller Moo? I'm kind of liking this guy's character.
Yeah. As we see a little bit more, I'm kind of digging him. I think he's kind of neat. He kind of reminds me a little bit of a typical alien. The traditional 50s alien with the eyes and the head like that, like a gray, which is kind of neat.
It kind of looks like a different colored Jeff Johns, or not Jeff Johns, John Jones, Martian Manhunter.
You're right, kind of, and I like how some of the plot threads from the first issue, they're kind of coming back around again. We're when they describe this series as a cosmic police procedural, and I really feel like the way that Grant Morrison is unraveling the threads of the plot reminds me a lot of a police story. That whole scene, the big bulk of this issue was that interrogation.
Yeah, it really was.
And it really did feel like a cop show.
Yeah, because you felt like they were sitting at the precinct, I mean, and they were on OA. So you kind of get the feel, and you kind of get the feel like the good cop, bad cop going on too.
Yeah, and I love the fact that this alien spider baby girl thought that Hal was the bad cop, and he was actually playing the good cop.
Spider baby girl. Does that thing have a name? Do you even know?
I did not get a name, so that's what I'm like. I don't know what to call her, but but I thought it was kind of neat how he played off of that, and the fact that she was really just kind of running away from home and a rebellious teenager with 8 legs. It was just kind of fun, and some of the aliens are again over the top. When you look at that nurse at the end of the issue, how bizarre can you get?
Which one is that?
It's that 6-armed, orange creature.
Whatever it is.
Yes, whatever she is. But it's interesting. And again, Hal doesn't blink in dealing with her at all, which again shows how much he's experienced. But at the same time, it's this Hellboy. What's the other movie I'm thinking of? I just had it on the tip of my tongue. The Men in Black. The Men in Black.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You know how they kind of treated aliens, and some of them were really kind of over the top and really freaky weird, but they're played as serious, and so you kind of accept it despite the outrageousness of it all. Right.
They're kind of like, it's almost like they're familiar, or a friendly face for that matter.
Yeah. I really got, with Steranko in that Oa picture, it reminded me of a Jack Kirby, Jim Steranko mashup.
Oh yeah, it kind of had that 70s jive to it, Yeah, the old psychedelic kind of 70s jive to it.
It reminds me of some of the science fiction European books, like Valerian and stuff like that.
Or it could be the cover of a record album that came out in the 70s.
It absolutely could.
Techno pop.
So overall, I'm liking the book. There are things about it I'm on the fence on, but I think again, this is the kind of thing where we're reading it in chapters, and I think when it's collected, it will read maybe a little better. But I need to give Grant more time to sell me on his depiction of Hal.
Well, and not only that too, we're looking at this from, I think you've been there before. We've all been there before. We're looking at this from a different perspective, where you have to leave wayside a lot of the history that you've read up until that point, and a lot of the familiarization you had with Venditti especially. And this is a big transition to a different type of writer altogether. When you go from Venditti to Morrison, they're just two distinct writers, and you can't compare the two. And I think it's jarring for me to go from Venditti to Morrison, because I'm familiar with a lot of other Morrison's work. But I've been really, really big into Venditti since he's been writing Green Lantern and Hawkman, and I've really, really adapted to his style. So it's a little different for me to take this in, and I'm not fully attracted to it just yet. I'm about maybe 60% there, but I think a few more issues under my belt that might make me more comfortable with it.
Yeah, I'd give it that, and I think, for people that jumped on there in the Jeff Johns era, all they've known is that depiction of Hal that we've seen from Jeff Johns and Peter Tomasi and Robert Venditti and everyone that's there. And it's all very, very similar style. Hal's been very much in character throughout. And this is a depiction. I mean, if you've been reading Green Lantern for a long period of time, you're kind of used to some of the things that the creative staff did as writers changed and everybody tried to add their own thing to it. I mean, you compare the John Broome Hal Jordan to the Denny O'Neil Hal Jordan, and they're almost two different characters.
Right, exactly. So I mean, all in all, I mean, I love it. I think it's gonna. I think it's doing well. I mean, I've heard nothing but great things about it on the. You know, when I troll around on Twitter or whatnot. I mean, nobody's really talking negative about it. But then again, I think a lot of the focus recently with DC in particular is Aquaman and pushing the release of the movie coming out this December. In about a week or so.
Yeah, yeah. It's coming up. What is it? The 21st.
21st. Gosh, I'm so excited for that. It's going to be amazing.
And now I don't know if do you have Amazon Prime?
Yeah, I sure do. And I couldn't get the early tickets because they sold out really quick.
Ah.
And there wasn't really a lot of places that was close to me that was screening it. Yeah, it was kind of sad. Did you get yours?
I haven't gotten them yet. I'm going to. I'm trying to convince my wife. We have a family obligation on the 15th, and I'm trying to see if that can be rearranged a little bit.
When it comes down to it, everything can be rearranged a little bit.
That's right. It just requires a little negotiation.
So I think I'm going to wait till the 21st when it comes out, and I'm kind of staying away from a lot of the talk about it. I mean, other than the fact that I've heard nothing but positive, but it's to be expected. This is the first major film that's going to have entire sequencing of underwater theatrical. It's going to be phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. But yeah, right now DC and Warner Brothers' big push is on that. So.
Yeah.
But, we'll see. But anyway, good issue. And let's, what do you say we wrap this up and we'll come back in a few minutes and we'll talk about Green Lantern Rebirth.
All right. Sounds great, Myron.
I say there, boy.
Sir?
Yes, you.
Mr. Scrooge?
What day is it?
Why, it's New Comic Book Day today, sir.
New comic... I haven't missed it. I'm not too late. Happy day. Timmy.
Sir?
Happy New Comic Book Day.
Happy New Comic Book Day to you, sir.
Happy New Comic Book Day to us all.
Happy New Comic Book Day to us all. Happy New Comic Book Day, everyone.
All right, everybody, welcome back, and looks like it's time for another retro review, and Myron's going to be taking this one away, and up on deck we have the Green Lantern Rebirth, put out by Jeff Johns, illustrated by Ben Sciver. Now, a lot of people often default to this as being the where do I start when I want to pick up reading about Hal Jordan, and let's see what Myron agrees.
Well, it's interesting when you go back to the time frame when this came out. Jeff Johns actually brought Hal Jordan back to life temporarily during the Day of Judgment miniseries, where they did a story about the Spectre not having a host, and Jeff Johns originally wanted to kill the Enchantress and have her be the host and just bring Hal back to life, but DC decided they wanted to take Hal and in that direction of the Spectre, and Jeff Johns brought him back there, but originally they had that whole thing in mind. He did, at least. And you flash forward to the year 2004, and the sales of the Green Lantern book were dropping. They were having problems with that. And so there was that thing going on. But at the same time, you had Dan Didio, who was interested in Peter Tomasi, wanted to bring Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps mythos back, because for about 10 years, the Green Lantern Corps had been gone. And there were a number of things that built up to this particular 6-issue miniseries, but when Jeff Johns brought the story back, he really had a way of, how do I look at the history of what happened during Emerald Twilight and the things that maybe have transpired in Green Lantern history past? How do I mix all those things together, and how do I get Hal out of this knot that he's been put in? I mean, and he kind of finds a way of exonerating Hal without completely excusing him. And I thought the idea of Parallax and the Fear Entity made so much sense that it was, to me, a beautifully crafted story. And you have him collaborating with Ethan Van Sciver, and this is the work that really put him on the map. I had the good fortune to interview Ethan Van Sciver a few years ago. It was about 4 years ago, and it was the 10th anniversary of this particular story. And we were talking, and what I didn't know was that Sinestro was originally not going to be part of the story.
I didn't know that either.
Originally, Jeff did not have Sinestro in it, and he and Ethan, through their collaboration process, Ethan sold Jeff on the idea that, well, if you're going to bring Hal back, you got to bring Sinestro back. That's like bringing back Superman without Zod, or bringing back Batman without the Joker. You know, you kind of got to do it. So it was neat to see how that collaboration brings this forth. And Ethan Van Sciver just drew such great detailed work that look, you know, the redesign of the uniform, not all those things stuck, but a lot of them did. And it's interesting to see a costume as iconic as the classic Green Lantern costume get a refit at this point. And that stick around. And a lot of the characters that spring out of this particular story, like Parallax, go on to become mainstays. The other thing I really have to give Jeff Johns a lot of credit for was that, again, according to Ethan Van Sciver and some of the articles I've read, DC originally told Jeff Johns they could kill Kyle Rayner off. And Jeff took the harder road and decided not to do that. And he tried to, in this book, when Hal finally comes back and he gets to shake Kyle's hand, there's this whole thing of trying to get two big pieces of the fandom that were at odds with each other to come to terms with each other and find some mutual respect. And I think that really did accomplish that. Some people have a hard time with Parallax being the villain, thinking it's a cop-out. And I don't know, what do you think about that? Did you think Parallax was a good solution?
Oh yeah, I think it was totally fine. I've always liked Parallax. I think the only time I didn't like Parallax was in the movie, which we don't even need to talk about. But as far as how he's utilizing this book, I thought it was great.
Yeah, I did too. I didn't think it was that far of a reach, and it helps in some ways deal with some of the plot problems of Emerald Twilight. You know, one of the things that I always criticized Emerald Twilight for was that when you look at issue 48 of that Green Lantern series, which takes place after the destruction of Coast City and before Emerald Twilight, Hal comes to terms with the loss of Coast City.
He does.
He has a team up with Green Arrow, and he's in a good place by the time that issue's done, and nobody really major died in the explosion. So, you get that next issue and all of a sudden it's a complete 180. And we all know the reasons why and all behind the scenes stuff. But from a pure narrative sense, it didn't make any point. There was no point there. But Jeff takes it and spins it, and he tries to explain some of the insurance salesman bits and the lack of confidence, and even the premature gray stuff, which I hated. He even explains how that happened. I just thought it was a great stroke, and I loved how they took that and they played off of how Batman really never forgave Hal, and that scene where Hal in the last issue where Hal punches Batman is classic.
My favorite scene ever. I will still contest to this day that is my favorite panel in any comic book, period. It always has been. But I'm not a big fan of Batman, so.
I respect the character for what it is, but yeah, I'm not a huge Batman fan either. And I love, in particular, how Jon Stewart dresses Batman down.
Yeah, he really does. No, I've never been a big fan of the Batman. It's saturated. There's too many books about him. I wish we had that many Green Lantern books.
Yeah, that's the truth.
But back to Rebirth. It's probably one of the best panels I've ever seen. I remember vividly when I was first reading Rebirth, and when I came across that panel, and it almost felt like a tear came to my eye, and then just a big smile and a grin across my face. It was fun.
And I think to me one of the most the point at which I knew Jeff Johns understood the Hal Jordan character was when Hal has come back to life and Sinestro hits him, and you see that panel where Hal goes flying through space and he bounces across the surface of I think it was the moon, but bounces across, and he gets up and he's got this smirk on his face. To me, you
gotta love it. That's the arrogance. I mean, that's the Hal Jordan arrogance that that most everybody that knows the character knows that's who he is.
Yeah. It was great. And I loved how he didn't put any of the characters down. Like, John and Guy and Kyle all had a role in this story. and the way he brings Guy Gardner back to being a Green Lantern from that stupid warrior persona was nice. And I don't know. There's so much about that book I love. I think I've bought it in floppy. I bought it in graphic novel hardcover, and then I bought the Absolute edition. I love the book. I think it's one of the best Green Lantern stories just because of what it accomplished.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. I mean, I really do. I mean, again, it's Jeff Johns, and he did the same thing when he took on Aquaman. He reinvented the character. No, I mean, say reinvented. I guess it's kind of a different word. Reignited the character, kind of like placed it into the high echelon of the lexicon of DC's characterizations. I mean, it's kind of like how Iron Man was before the movie came out. Because you remember Iron Man wasn't even that. I mean, he was popular, but he wasn't a top tier character. And then the movie came out, and then all of a sudden he's elevated to this A-list character. And Jeff Johns kind of did that with Green Lantern. He did the same thing with Aquaman, and that's his knack.
I just picked up the first issue of Shazam, and it's really good.
I haven't read it yet. I have it downloaded, and I also am gonna read the first issue of Martian Manhunter.
Oh yeah.
Steve Orlando. I'm sure that's gonna be really good.
But yeah, this Jeff Johns version of Shazam, I think that's one of the things that Jeff does really well is he takes these characters that maybe needs to be polished off a little bit, and he finds a way to get back to the diamond in the rough and gets the diamond part out.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, because reflectively, if you read Rebirth, Green Lantern Rebirth, and then you read his beginning series in Aquaman, I mean, reflectively, they're almost identical. Because, I mean, Arthur Curry has just as much of the arrogance that Hal Jordan has.
True. And, one of the things that I also got to comment on is how Jeff kind of found a voice for each one of the lanterns. That they weren't four guys that were interchangeable. Each one of them had a unique voice. And then you see Ethan Van Sciver support that with the way that he did the constructs. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was great. It was the first time I think that a writer really tried to really push the individual personalities of the characters and why they are so different, yet each one equally worthy of wearing the ring.
Right. It makes them indistinguishable for the casual reader.
Yeah. I just thought that was really a nice touch. And this is laying the groundwork for what's to come. And it's probably the single best run of Green Lantern in the history of Green Lantern. Yeah,
that's bold. And you know what? I'd say that's probably accurate. And I venture to guess that a great population of the Green Lantern fandom that are Hal Jordan fans would agree with it.
Yeah, well, I also think, too, it brought so many people to Green Lantern that had not read it before because it was such a hot book. People had clamored for the return of the Green Lantern Corps. I mean, he had groups of people, that's what the whole goal was. It wasn't to get rid of Kyle. It was to bring Hal and the Corps back. And, this accomplished that. There was so much chatter about this book, and there were so many, I want to say almost each issue got 5 reprintings. It was crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Yeah, I agree. I always liked the Sinestro Corps War. That was always one of my favorite titles.
Oh, absolutely. When Jeff Johns sold this whole idea, he said he had, this was going to be like Star Wars, and that, Green Lantern Rebirth was A New Hope, and Sinestro Corps War was The Empire Strikes Back, and Blackest Night was Return of the Jedi. That was kind of his thing, I can't say enough about this particular story because it does so much to lay the groundwork for what the great stories we get coming out of this book. And it didn't throw away anything. It didn't ignore it all. It kind of made some excuses and it made sense of things that didn't make sense in the first place.
Agreed. I agree.
So if you've never read this, you really owe it to yourself to read it. I hope you love it as much as I do if you haven't read it and pick it up and give it a shout. It's a great book.
The Absolute edition is really cool. I like the cover on it with the hand and the emblem in the background.
Oh yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, it's one of the coolest covers.
I got that signed by Ethan Van Sciver.
Oh, you're so lucky.
It was funny because he was in actually came to my area. Now I live in a very small town. they actually got Ethan Van Sciver to come to our town for a convention. I was shocked. And then I got to host the panel, which we recorded for an episode of the podcast of OA. And it was also my 50th birthday that month. So my wife let me get a commission. So I have an original Hal Jordan, Ethan Van Sciver sketch in my office.
Oh, go you, man. Go you.
So I love it. But I think Ethan is one of those people that when you look at, every generation of every iteration has an artist that's the seminal artist. And you look at, for example, obviously Gil Kane was the artist of the 50s and 60s. And then he had Neil Adams in the late 60s, early 70s. And then it was Joe Staton. And then it was Ethan Van Sciver.
Yeah. He's still drawing too, isn't he? I don't know what titles he's done lately.
He is no longer with DC. He left DC Comics when his exclusive contract was up, in part because DC had a social media policy which did not allow him to respond to some of the criticism he was getting. Ethan is rather outspoken politically and was under attack from a number of people, and he found he couldn't defend himself based on DC's policy. So he left DC, and he just crowdfunded a book called Cyberfrog, which was a character that he created years ago before he started with DC, and he's doing a big project with Cyberfrog.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I see his posts about it all the time on Twitter. It's a pretty cool looking character too, by the way.
Yeah, it is. I've always had a soft spot for Ethan. I don't agree with everything he says, but I think he's just a wonderfully talented artist.
Yeah, he is. He totally is. And we don't always have to agree on political opinions, but I mean, everybody's got their own. So.
That's right. And I would never judge somebody based on what their political leaning is. I come to comics for escapism. I don't care whether they have a D or an R after their name. It doesn't make any difference to me, But
exactly right.
Anyway, Green Lantern Rebirth, if you've never read it, definitely pick it up. If you have read it, I hope you love it as much as I do.
Agreed. Totally agree.
All right, let's take a quick break, and we'll come back and we'll wrap up this episode.
All right, sounds good, Myron.
This is Salak, Green Lantern of Sector 1418, and you are receiving the podcast of OA.
The podcast of
All right, everybody, welcome back. Myron, another episode, 131, in the books. And looks like we're 2 issues into Grant Morrison's run, and I guess we'll see where it's going to lead us to, huh?
Absolutely. I think one of the things we've got to figure out between the two of us is, we only have one book a month, and I'd like to do 2 episodes a month. So I don't know whether we're going to do like an all retro review episode, and we each pick something to do, or what we'll do. But we'll have to find a way to make it all work. But I love chatting about the book that's out now, and I love chatting about the old stuff. I hope you do too. No,
I totally agree, and I know that we went a little extra time here in between our episodes, and a lot of it was, stuff got in the way or whatnot. But I'm all for the double retro. If you want to choose one next for the next podcast, we can do that. I'll do the Sinestro Corps War. I'd like to tackle that one.
Okay, Sinestro Corps War. And I'll pick something else out, and I'll kind of go maybe further back in time.
Okay.
Maybe I'll pick something that isn't even a Green Lantern issue that has Green Lantern in it.
Yeah, you can do that too. Have you ever read that book, Green Lantern Will World? It's called Will World.
Oh, yeah, that's a very Morrison-esque book, isn't it?
Yeah, I started reading the first few pages of it, and I had to put it down for some reason because I got distracted or whatever, and I haven't went back to it yet. But yeah, you're totally right. It's very Grant Morrison-ish.
Yeah, it's one of those books where you do really have to sit down and read it uninterrupted because there's a lot going on, and you kind of have to unravel it a little bit in your head.
Yeah, totally agree.
It's pretty neat, but all right. Well, I'm glad everybody stuck around. Episode number 131 is basically in the books, and we should be back hopefully in a couple weeks. Depends on how the holidays go, but we'll see everyone then. And until next time, as I always like to say, please keep your power rings charged, make every day your brightest day, and treat each other well.
See you guys.
The Podcast of OA is the official podcast of the blog of OA and a proud member of the Comics Podcast Network. Share your comments and questions by calling the show's voicemail line at 406-POD-OA. That's 406-763-6362. You can send your emails to podcast@blogofoa.com. You can also find the Blog of OA and the Podcast of OA on Twitter and Facebook. Green Lantern and other related characters are the copyrighted property of DC Comics Incorporated and are used without permission. The Blog of OA and the Podcast of OA are fan productions and do not claim any ownership over the Green Lantern or any other copyrighted properties.